Welcome to Whispers and Confessions. There might be a twist waiting, so please make sure to watch until the end. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Let's begin right away.
Hello, I'm Kim Jin-soo, a young Korean man. I work in video production and photography. Today, I'd like to share a shocking experience I had during my junior year of college in Japan. After graduating high school, I went straight to Japan for my studies. To cover living expenses, I had to get a part-time job, and since I was interested in video editing, I was on the lookout for related opportunities. One day, a senior from Korea reached out to me. "Hey, the place I work is looking for an assistant, and it could be helpful for your major. Are you interested? The pay's pretty decent too." As soon as I heard that, I said yes. Earning money while gaining on-the-job experience? It seemed like the perfect combination. So, I went to the location my senior had introduced. When I arrived at the studio, I was completely taken aback. The filming location turned out to be an adult video, AV, set. While I knew about the AV genre, I never imagined I would actually step foot on one of its sets. For a moment, I was frozen in shock, overwhelmed by the unfamiliar environment. But since I was already there, I couldn't just turn back. My senior met me when I arrived for my first day. He took me to introduce me to the director. The director was a second-generation Korean Japanese, and though his Korean was a little rusty, he greeted me warmly in Korean. "Oh, you're from Korea? Nice to meet you." His awkward pronunciation oddly put me at ease, and from the start, he was kind, helping to calm my nerves. He gave me some basic tasks, such as setting up the lights and adjusting camera angles. It was only then that I realized my senior was in charge of lighting on the set. I remember thinking, lighting is more complicated than I thought. Following the director's instructions, I began helping the other crew members set up the equipment. It was my first time seeing how much preparation went into scenes I'd only ever watched on a screen before. The crew was busy arranging the bed, setting up the lights, and checking the sound equipment. Meanwhile, the director and a few staff members sat on a couch reviewing the script. One surprising thing was that there were quite a few women working on the set. The overall atmosphere was calmer than I expected, and it felt like just another film set. Everything was new and fascinating to me. Just then, I heard the sound of water running from a shower on one side of the set. I couldn't help but wonder, do movies like this really need a script? But as the filming progressed, I began to understand why. A few moments later, a young actress, probably in her early 20s and about 160 centimeters tall, emerged from the shower in a bathrobe. She had fair skin and a graceful figure. She lay down on the bed, waiting for the director's instructions. A female staff member helped her out of her bathrobe and covered her again to prepare her for the scene. Shortly after, four men in long coats entered from outside. Some of them looked familiar, likely actors I had seen in AV videos before. They stood quietly next to the bed, and I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. One distinctive thing about the Japanese adult film industry is that there are far more female than male actors. Male actors are often a fixed group who appear in multiple productions, making them recognizable across various videos, while new actresses are introduced regularly, leading to more variety in female performers. As the filming got underway, I slowly started to adjust to the environment. On the director's signal, the four male actors simultaneously took off their coats. Surprisingly, their appearances were rather ordinary. This, too, was a characteristic of Japanese AV. Unlike Western adult films, where male actors often have muscular physiques, in Japan, average body types are more common. Meanwhile, the bathrobe covering the actress was removed, revealing her beautiful figure. Although I had tried to mentally prepare myself, being faced with this situation in real life made me freeze up in tension. As I moved closer to capture the camera angles the director needed, my hands began to shake, but everyone around me continued their work as if it was completely routine. Inside the camera's frame, the actors' performances became more intense, while outside the frame, the staff remained focused and methodical, carrying out their duties without a hint of distraction. Watching them, I couldn't help but feel impressed. Everyone had their role, and they executed it professionally. At one point, I approached my senior, who was busy with the lighting, and asked, "This isn't easy at all. How long have you been doing this?" He smiled and replied, I was just as nervous as you at first. But the more you do it, the more it just becomes another shoot. You have to think of it professionally. Refocusing, I watched the director closely as he handled the camera, paying careful attention to how he adjusted the angles to capture the actress's beauty. He would zoom in slowly from a wide shot to a close-up, constantly fine-tuning the camera's position to match the actor's movements. The director frequently stopped the filming to adjust the actor's positions or movements, sometimes shooting the same scene multiple times. To my surprise, filming in AV turned out to be just as demanding and time-consuming as any other movie production. They would pause and reset several times to ensure the right performance and movement, and I realized the work was far more meticulous than I had expected. After more than 2 hours, the actors in front of the camera were visibly exhausted, and even the crew seemed to be struggling to maintain their focus. I was sweating from the tension of the shoot, my heart racing the entire time, trying to stay focused while also keeping my emotions in check. This experience gave me a first-hand look into the realities of the adult film industry. Contrary to what it might seem on the surface, it was just as professional, demanding, and physically exhausting as any other form of filmmaking. The shoot lasted over 7 hours, and by the end of it, my senior came up to me. "You did great. For your first time, you handled it really well. I thought it would be awkward for you, but you stuck through it like a pro." I felt a sense of relief at his praise, but at the same time, I started to see this job as more than just a way to earn money. It felt like a real challenge, one that could help me grow. The director seemed to like me too. After the shoot, he approached me and asked, "Mr. Jinsu, would you be able to keep working with us starting tomorrow?" I was thrilled and immediately bowed in gratitude. "Yes, thank you. I'll work hard." At that moment, I became convinced that this wasn't just a part-time job, but a valuable opportunity to build skills and experience. Filming didn't happen every day. Once a shoot started, it could last anywhere from 1 or 2 days to as long as a week. When there was filming, I mainly assisted on set, but after the shoot, I could also get involved in post-production, which aligned with my major in video editing. Both the director and the on-site producer liked me a lot, so I had the chance to learn filming techniques on set while also contributing to the editing process, developing my skills. The concepts for each shoot varied, and the actresses would often change, with some productions featuring multiple actresses. One interesting aspect was the diversity of the actresses' nationalities. In addition to Japanese actresses, there were also Chinese, Western, Southeast Asian, and occasionally even Korean actresses. I was curious about why they had chosen this line of work, but I didn't have many opportunities to interact with them. Most of the actresses would leave right after the shoot, and I was usually busy diving into the post-production work as soon as filming wrapped. About 3 months into this job, I had become more comfortable on set and was gaining some level of expertise. However, one day, an unexpected incident occurred. A heated argument broke out between the director of photography, DP, and the main director. They were speaking so fast, with some dialect mixed in, that I couldn't catch everything, but I gathered the gist of it. The DP was frustrated with how long the shoot was taking, while the director insisted that multiple takes were necessary to achieve more natural performances. Eventually, the DP, clearly fed up, slammed down the camera and stormed out. I stood there, frozen in shock, as I watched the scene unfold. The director let out a deep sigh and approached me. "This is unbelievable," he muttered in frustration. Then, turning to me, he said, "Jinsu, from what I saw last time, you seem to have picked up the filming techniques quite well. Do you think you can take over the shoot right now? We absolutely need to finish today." My eyes went wide with surprise. It was sudden, but I didn't want to miss this opportunity. "Yes, I'll do it. I'll do my best," I responded, bowing deeply once again. My heart started pounding, but I steadied myself and grabbed the camera. The absence of the director of photography felt like it could be the most important moment of my life. The actress we were filming that day was beautiful and captivating, but I made a conscious effort to focus on the fact that this was an incredible opportunity for me. I concentrated fully on the shoot, determined to make the most of it. The director nodded approvingly as he watched the monitor, and the shoot went much more smoothly than expected, finishing faster than I had imagined. Everyone let out a collective sigh of relief, grateful for the smooth wrap-up. After the shoot, the director called me aside. Thanks to you, Jin-soo, we were able to get through today's shoot without a hitch. How would you feel about continuing to work with us and handling more filming? My heart raced again. I had started out as just a regular assistant, and now I was being offered a chance to take on a critical role. I paused for a moment, but I already knew my answer. Director, I'll work really hard. Thank you so much. Please take care of me moving forward. And that's how I landed a full-time job even before graduating college. The pay wasn't bad either, so I decided to continue working in this field. Around this time, the goddess of love began to smile upon me. That goddess was a girl who was 1 year behind me in school and worked at a cafe I frequented near campus. I would often stop by that cafe to drink coffee and work on my video editing skills on my laptop. Of course, I wasn't editing adult films there. I'd watch normal films or K-pop music videos to study different filming and editing techniques. But the real reason I kept coming back to that cafe was a beautiful barista named Miyo. Miyo stood over 165 centimeters tall, with long, straight hair, a sweet face, and a charming smile. She was quite popular with the guys who hung around the cafe. Her features were so sharp and striking that she didn't even seem typically Japanese to me, and that only made her more attractive. She wore her hair neatly with bangs, and her large, bright eyes always gave off a fresh and innocent impression. While she wasn't conventionally perfect, she was incredibly lovely and had an air of comfort about her. What stood out the most were her slim waist, long legs, and graceful curves, leaving a strong impression on anyone who saw her. The problem was that she was so popular and always busy during peak hours, so I rarely had a chance to talk to her beyond ordering my coffee. But one day, I had a rare window of free time. No classes, no shoots. The cafe was unusually quiet that day, and I was leisurely sipping my coffee while watching K-pop videos and studying editing techniques when Miyo approached me. "Excuse me, are you Korean by any chance?" she asked with a friendly smile. My heart started pounding. I stood up awkwardly, caught off guard. Yeah, I'm from Korea," I stammered. She beamed and said, "I'm Miyo. I really love Korean music, especially K-pop. I'm also learning Korean. Would you be interested in being my language exchange partner?" I nearly had a heart attack. How could such a beautiful girl come up to me and ask to be friends? Gathering my composure, I jokingly responded, "Hi, I'm Kim Jin-soo. How could I say no to becoming friends with someone as pretty as you?" She laughed and replied, "Really? That makes me so happy." Then she handed me a piece of paper with her phone number on it. "Can I text you after my shift today?" she asked. "Sure, I'll be waiting," I said, taking the paper, still in disbelief. From that moment on, my days were filled with excitement and anticipation. I saved her number right away and texted her, "I'll come by when you finish work. See you then." I eagerly counted down the hours until our meeting. As her shift ended, I made my way back to the cafe. The moment she spotted me, she greeted me with a wide, radiant smile. At that moment, she looked like an angel. Her smile left me momentarily speechless, but I managed to greet her calmly. "Miyo, you're done with work? Must have been a long day." She smiled brightly. "Not at all. Thank you for waiting, Jin-soo." Her cheerful laugh instantly lifted my mood. "How about we go for a walk in the park nearby and talk?" I suggested, eager to spend more time with her in a quieter place. She agreed readily, and we walked side by side. I couldn't help but be enchanted by the soft scent of her perfume and the gentle tone of her voice. Once we arrived at the park, we strolled a bit longer before stopping by a bench. "Shall we sit here and chat?" she suggested. I quickly checked to see if the bench was clean, dusting it off with my hand. "Please, have a seat," I said, gesturing toward it. She laughed as she sat down. "Wow, Korean guys really are considerate. Japanese guys don't usually do things like this," she said with a playful surprise in her voice. I was a bit embarrassed but also pleased by her words. "Ah, is that so? I didn't really think about it," I replied, laughing shyly. Miyo nodded, still smiling. "It's true. I watch a lot of Korean dramas, and in those, the men are always so kind to the women." Feeling a bit more embarrassed, I joked, "Well, dramas tend to exaggerate a lot. Real life isn't that romantic, to be honest." She giggled. "Maybe, But I like that kind of kindness, she added, her eyes sparkling. We continued to chat on the bench, slowly getting to know each other better. Miyo told me how she became interested in Korean culture, especially music. The first time I heard K-pop, I was hooked. The energy, the dancing, the lyrics, they were all so captivating. That's what made me want to learn Korean. I listened closely, and I took the opportunity to mention my work. I actually use K-pop videos a lot when I'm editing. I study the camera angles and editing techniques from those videos. She looked at me, intrigued. Really? So you're studying video editing? Yeah, that's my major, and I'm working in the field now. I'm still learning, but it's a lot of fun. Her eyes lit up with excitement. Wow, that's amazing. Do you think you could help me edit a video of me singing someday? I've been wanting to make one. I laughed. Of course. I'd be happy to help with anything you need. She beamed. Really? Thank you. I'm so glad we became friends, she said, bowing playfully. And just like that, we agreed to help each other with languages. She would teach me Japanese, and I would help her with Korean. Even though my college classes and filming schedule kept me busy, I always found time to see her. We spent more and more time together, teaching each other, and naturally, we grew closer. One day, as her shift was ending, Miyo smiled at me and asked, "Jin-soo, would you like to grab a drink with me tonight?" For a second, I was taken aback. I was exhausted from a full day of shooting, and my body ached. But how could I refuse her offer? Scratching my head, I smiled and replied, "Sure, if you know a good spot, let's go there." She led me to a cozy restaurant with private rooms. I had expected a small, casual izakaya, the kind you often see in Japan, tiny, with just a few seats and a relaxed vibe. But to my surprise, Miyo had chosen a place with a clean, intimate atmosphere, and we settled into a room with sliding doors. The room wasn't large, but it was private, giving us a quiet space of our own. Once the waiter brought the food and slid the door shut, the quiet settled in, and the atmosphere between us felt a little awkward. I tried to break the ice, raising my glass and making a joke. "Miyo, why didn't you bring me to a place like this sooner? We could have come here ages ago." She wasn't flustered at all and laughed brightly. "Well, now that we're closer, I figured it was safe," she said with a playful smile. I was completely charmed by her warm laughter and smile. To ease my nerves, I took a sip of my drink, and finally, I mustered the courage to look her in the eyes and speak honestly. "Miyo, I like you." She looked slightly surprised, but soon smiled mischievously. "And?" Her playful response made me even more nervous, but I gathered my courage and, looking straight into her eyes again, I asked sincerely, "Miyo, will you be my girlfriend? I'm serious." I waited anxiously for her response, my heart pounding. Miyo looked into my eyes for a moment, then broke into a bright smile and said, "Okay, I like you too, Jin-soo. You idiot. Why did it take you so long to confess? I've been waiting forever." Her words made me let out a deep sigh of relief, and I smiled back at her. The tension melted away, and we clinked our glasses together, laughing and talking freely after finally opening up to each other. At one point, Miyo giggled and said, "Jin-soo, there's something I've always wanted to say after watching Korean dramas." Curious, I asked, "What is it?" Her face turned a little red as she replied, "Jagiya, honey." In Korean dramas, couples always call each other Jagiya or Yobo, and it's so sweet. I've always wanted to try saying it. Her Korean was still a bit clumsy, but the message came through loud and clear. I found it incredibly cute, so I gently placed my hand on her cheek and softly stroked her face. "Jagiya, say it again," I told her, gazing at her lovingly. She smiled, looked into my eyes, and said, "Jagiya, Jagiya," over and over, her voice full of affection. It was adorable, and I felt pure happiness in that moment, as if each word she spoke sank deep into my heart. Then, suddenly, Miyo stood up. "Jagiya, you look really tired today. Let me give you a massage." Without waiting for me to respond, she came over and began gently pressing on my shoulders and back. Her warm hands slowly eased the tension in my body. "Jagiya, am I good at this?" she asked playfully, continuing to knead my shoulders. already lost in the comfort of her touch. I replied, "Yeah, it feels amazing." She moved even closer, her upper body pressing against my back, and I could feel her warmth radiating through me. The soft fragrance surrounding her, combined with her gentle touch, captivated me entirely. Despite having spent the whole day shooting adult films, Miyo's delicate care and her subtle advances stirred something much deeper within me than simple physical attraction. It wasn't just a casual touch. It felt like an intimate connection from the heart. I turned slightly, smiled at her, and said, "Jagiya, you're making me feel too good. I might not be able to handle it." She laughed playfully and replied, "Then I'll just have to do more," and started massaging me even more enthusiastically. In that moment, I was overwhelmed with happiness and a deep sense of relaxation. On an impulsive whim, I gently took her hand, pulled her into my arms, and sat her on my lap. She accepted it so naturally, and as I softly caressed her face, I leaned in to kiss her. To my surprise, she responded with a passionate kiss, full of eagerness. Although her kiss was a little inexperienced, her enthusiasm was unmistakable. I wasn't exactly experienced myself, but having seen countless scenes on AV film sets, I instinctively started guiding her. My hands gradually explored her body, and we both became lost in the heat of the moment, drawn into each other's passion. After some time, breathless, she whispered into my ear, "Jagiya, let's go somewhere else." That brought me back to my senses, and I took her hand as we headed to a nearby hotel. The moment we entered the hotel room, we couldn't hold back our desire any longer. Miyo responded to every touch with eagerness, and that night, we shared a deeply intimate connection. It wasn't until afterward that I realized something incredible. This had been Miyo's first time. I noticed the small but unmistakable trace on the sheets, and I couldn't believe it. In a country like Japan, which is often considered to be sexually open, meeting a woman her age who was still a virgin was something I hadn't expected. Even in Korea, that would be rare these days. But rather than making me uncomfortable, it only made her feel more pure and precious in my eyes. Exhausted, we fell asleep in each other's arms, and morning soon came. I woke up to a tickling sensation and found Miyo already awake, playfully brushing the tiny hairs on my nose with her fingers. Smiling at her cute antics, I pulled her into an embrace and gave her a gentle kiss. But as we moved, I noticed her wince in pain from time to time, a slight furrow forming on her brow. "Jagiya, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was your first time, and I think I overdid it last night." I felt a pang of guilt and hugged her tightly. But Miyo shook her head and smiled softly. "Jagiya, you don't need to apologize. I was really happy," she said, lightly kissing me on the lips. At that moment, I felt like the luckiest person in the world. Later that morning, as we left the hotel, Miyo was walking with a slight limp, so I quickly hailed a taxi for her. She gave me a big smile and waved as the taxi drove away, and in that moment, I knew our love had deepened. And so, we embarked on our sweet journey of love. Every day became more exciting, and I found myself thinking more and more about our future together. I worked harder, earned more money, and dreamed of building a happy life with her. Every moment with Miyo felt precious, and I gave my best to ensure that we could have a bright future. Like any other college couple, we spent time together on campus, and I often caught jealous or envious glances from other guys. But I didn't care. I was enjoying every moment of our relationship, and whenever we had time, we went on movie dates or short trips. I savored every second I spent with her. But there was something I hadn't told Miyo. I had only mentioned that I worked in video editing, never specifying that I was involved in adult film production. I was afraid she'd judge me or develop some kind of prejudice. In hindsight, that fear turned out to be a huge mistake. One day, I was called out for an outdoor shoot with the director. I hadn't been given many details, so I felt a little anxious as I got into the car. When we arrived at a forest location, the director explained that this shoot was special. Its goal was to help the actress express raw, natural emotions. While preparing for the shoot, I noticed something felt off. The atmosphere was different from the usual shoots, but I brushed it off, thinking it was just nerves. The director picked a location and made a phone call. Before long, a few men showed up with a woman in tow. She had long hair, but her face wasn't clearly visible. She seemed drunk, stumbling as the men led her forward, and the whole situation felt uneasy. The more I watched, the more I felt an unsettling sense of dread. The woman didn't look ready to film. In fact, she started showing signs of resistance. I finally worked up the courage to ask the director, "Is this shoot legit? The actress doesn't seem prepared." The director waved it off. "It's fine. Some actresses take a drink or use something to relax before filming. She signed a contract, so don't worry." His answer reassured me slightly, but the uneasy feeling lingered. When the shoot began, the male actors were unusually rough, and the actress's discomfort was obvious. Still, the director didn't stop. In fact, he demanded more close-up shots, ordering us to capture her expressions and body as closely as possible. In that moment, alarm bells rang in my head. Is this really legal? I couldn't shake the thought. After the shoot, the director watched the footage with a disturbing smile and said, "This turned out great. So real. This is going to sell like crazy." Hearing him say that only made my anxiety worse. Was the actress really there willingly, or had she been coerced? If it was the latter, this was clearly illegal and could lead to serious consequences later on. The director had come to trust me more and more, praising my editing speed and my skill with color correction. He considered me a valuable member of the team. We often worked together outside the studio, on what he called inspiration missions. But to me, his idea of inspiration seemed increasingly perverse. Though I had my doubts, I couldn't easily speak up, especially because I knew he trusted me. Still, the growing seriousness of our projects weighed on me. What the director called inspiration was becoming more uncomfortable with each shoot. He kept praising me and wanted me to join more of his projects, but deep down, I was conflicted. Should I keep going, or should I draw a line? By then, I had been working with the director for over a year. During that time, his concepts had become more and more daring. Japan had strict regulations, and even a small misstep could lead to legal trouble. The director reassured me that our films were only being sold on international websites, not within Japan, so we'd be fine. And in fact, our provocative, raw footage was wildly popular overseas, leading to more money and rewards. But the more successful we became, the more uneasy I felt. I began to seriously question whether I could continue down this path. One day, the director took me to a crowded train. In Japan, the trains during rush hour are notoriously packed, far beyond what anyone from outside the country might imagine. There are even station attendants whose job is to push people into the train to ensure the doors close. As we stood in the dense crowd, the director began explaining the concept for the day's shoot. In these jam-packed trains, women are often victims of sexual harassment. Today, we're going to recreate that very situation. We'll film the actress as if she's experiencing it for real. I felt uncomfortable, but I followed the director's instructions and prepared. We blended into the crowd and boarded the train. I held the camera above my head and started filming. The director signaled me and pointed toward a young woman with long hair. In the sea of people, I couldn't see her very clearly, but I aimed the camera in her direction and began filming. The train rocked back and forth, filled with noise and the press of bodies, and the air was suffocating. At the next station, the woman stepped out of the crowd, and I kept filming her movements until she disappeared. All I wanted at that point was for the shoot to be over. Once it was done, the director and I stepped off the train and sat on the station steps to review the footage. As the video played, I was horrified. The camera had captured several men surrounding the young woman, harassing her in graphic detail. She was trapped in the crowd, unable to resist, her body shrinking in on itself, her face twisted in fear. At that moment, I realized that what we were filming wasn't just a fictional scenario. It was something that actually happened in real life. The footage was disturbingly realistic, the angles perfectly framed. But as I was about to stop the video, the camera caught a glimpse of the woman's face as she walked away. My heart stopped. The woman in the video was my girlfriend, Miyo. I froze, my mind going blank. How was this possible? Why was she on that train? How had she ended up in such a situation? I couldn't make sense of it. The director, oblivious to my shock, kept watching the footage and commented, "Wow, This is incredibly real. You don't get scenes like this every day. This will sell like crazy overseas." Hearing those words filled me with rage. I threw the camera aside and grabbed him by the collar. "You bastard. This is a crime. That's my girlfriend in the video. I'm going to report you to the police," I yelled, shaking him violently. The other crew members rushed over, alarmed, and tried to pull us apart, but I refused to let go. The struggle went on for what felt like an eternity until they finally managed to separate us. The director, catching his breath, rubbed his neck and sneered at me. "Are you insane? She agreed to this. Do you think we just pull random women off the street? She signed the contract." "What? She's your girlfriend? Then go ask her yourself. Ask her if she didn't sign the papers." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. There was no way Miyo would have agreed to something like this. We'd been together for over 6 months, and she had never mentioned anything like this. Her family wasn't poor, and she had no reason to make money this way, or so I thought. "Shut up. Don't lie to me. Miyo isn't like that," I shouted back, refusing to accept his words. The director smirked at me with a mocking expression. "Oh, she's not, huh? Well, I had a great time with her last night in bed. She was more than eager to please." That was the last straw. My fist flew at his face, landing squarely on his cheek. He swung back, and we exchanged punches as the crew scrambled to break us up. They eventually managed to pull me away, pinning me down, while the director glared at me with a twisted grin. "Wake up, you idiot. Go ask her yourself. Don't take it out on me. And by the way, you're fired. Pack up your stuff and get the hell out." He kicked me hard in the stomach, and I collapsed, gasping for breath. They left me lying there, completely disregarding me. As I lay there, a chilling thought crossed my mind. Could the director be telling the truth? Had Miyo really signed that contract willingly? Or was there something else going on? I sat there, my mind racing, my heart pounding with confusion and dread. I wanted to believe in her, but the director's smug confidence made me doubt everything. Something was seriously wrong, and I needed to talk to Miyo directly to find out what was really going on. I rushed to the cafe where she worked, bursting through the door. Miyo saw me but didn't look surprised at all. It was as if she had been expecting me. Maybe the director had already warned her. I walked straight up to her, my heart pounding, and asked, "Miyo, is what Sato said true? Did you really sign a contract to do AV? Is that true?" She looked at me calmly, as if she had rehearsed this moment, and replied softly, "Yes, I did. I agreed to it." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. It felt like my entire world was collapsing. Why? Why would you do something like that? Was it for the money? Were you in trouble? I asked, desperate to understand. Miyo shook her head. "No, it wasn't about money. I just thought it would be fun. I was curious. I have friends who are in AV, and they seem so cool. I wanted to try it too." I couldn't comprehend what she was saying. For fun? That's your reason? I couldn't believe it. How could someone make such a decision so lightly? It went against everything I knew about her. "Miyo, are you serious? This is a life-changing decision. You can't just do something like this on a whim. And you're my girlfriend. How could you make such a huge decision without even talking to me about it first?" I was getting more and more worked up, but Miyo remained calm. "Jagiya, why are you so upset? Just because I do AV doesn't mean we can't be together. I love you, and nothing has changed between us. There are lots of people in this industry, and it's just a job. It doesn't have to affect our relationship." I was stunned into silence. Her mindset was completely different from mine, and the gap between us felt impossible to bridge. "Miyo, do you even hear yourself? We're in a serious relationship. How could you not talk to me about something like this? Don't you understand how big of a deal this is?" I pleaded with her, but her expression remained unchanged. "Jagiya, calm down. My love for you hasn't changed. What I do for work doesn't have to affect us. I just want to enjoy my life, and this seemed like something fun to try. Don't you think I have the right to do that?" Her words left me deeply hurt. I couldn't take it anymore. "Don't call me Jagiya. If you want to keep doing this, we're done. I can't accept this. It's over." I pushed her hand away and walked out of the cafe. As the door closed behind me, memories of our time together flooded my mind. Every happy moment we'd shared now shattered like broken glass. As I stepped outside, I was overwhelmed with emotions. I couldn't understand the path Miyo had chosen, and the loss of our relationship hit me hard. But I knew there was no point in talking to her any further. Our worldviews were too different, and I couldn't accept the life she had chosen. Breaking up was the only option. For the next few days, I couldn't shake the shock of what had happened. I had once imagined staying in Japan, continuing my work, and even marrying Miyo. But now, all of those dreams were gone. I turned down the job offers I had received in Japan and decided to return to Korea. When I finally returned home, everything that had happened in Japan felt like a nightmare. The love I had shared with Miyo, the joy we had felt, and the bitter, heartbreaking end of our relationship, none of it seemed real anymore. I had truly loved her, but I realized that staying in Japan and continuing down that path wasn't something I could do. While not all Japanese women were like Miyo, the wound she left on my heart would take a long time to heal. And that's the end of today's story. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thank you for reading.